Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Tuesday, June 9th. Before we get to the show, tomorrow I'm going to be sitting down with reporters who have been leading the Information SpaceX coverage. Theo Waite, our Elon Musk reporter, Valita Pao, our deals reporter, and Corey Weinberg, our Deputy Bureau Chief of Finance. The event is exclusive to subscribers, and you can RSVP right now at theinformation.com/events. Today on the show, OpenAI has confidentially filed for its IPO, setting the stage for another of one of the biggest public debuts in history. We'll talk with the Information's OpenAI reporter for more on what that means for the company. We'll break down all of the announcements from Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, including an AI overhaul of Siri. Plus, we've got a former SpaceX engineer coming on the show to give us a look at this week's IPO and what he's watching for. And we'll close out the show with our exclusive reporting that big banks are exploring ways to trade on the cost of computing power and why futures contracts would be central to all of that. It's going to be a great show and a busy one, so let's get right on into it. OpenAI has confidentially filed to go public. It is just a week behind Anthropic and comes the same week as SpaceX is about to list its shares. Here to explain to us on all of this is Erin Woo, our OpenAI and Google reporter. Erin, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Okay, so we were expecting this to come. How quickly can we expect OpenAI to actually move through the IPO process here?
Yeah, so I think for both Anthropic and for OpenAI, it's expected to still be a minute. So right now they've confidentially filed with the SEC, but there's still parts of the process that have to happen before they can actually list. So the SEC is going to give them comments on their draft submission, and then they're going to have to fix that, and then they're going to have to resubmit. So that could take a while. Like one person that I talked to estimated that it takes like a month approximately per round of comment. And maybe that's faster with AI. We don't really know yet. But so it's gonna take a second. So it's not like they confidentially filed today and they could list tomorrow.
And they basically acknowledged that the only reason they put out this press release was because they expected the leak to happen. Is that right?
Yes, it was a very if you're familiar with Sam Altman on Twitter, it was a very Sam Altman on Twitter-esque statement. So essentially it was this like one paragraph statement saying like, hey, we filed confidentially, we expect this to leak, we're just gonna announce it. And the other thing that they really tried to emphasize in this statement is the idea that they might not go public kind of anytime soon. Like they're basically trying to frame this as we want optionality. If we decide we want to go public sooner rather than later, this lets us do that. But at the same time, like maybe there's things we still want to do as a private company. And so they're trying to position this as we could go public and we're taking the steps, but also we might not.
So then this is where the second part of the news becomes more interesting. So they said that they would be looking to sell it, employees would have the opportunity to sell their
Yeah.
shares ahead of an IPO. What do we know there?
So basically, this is again like trying to give themselves more optionality. So OpenAI is locked in an intense race for talent with Anthropic and the other labs. Like if Anthropic's going to go public first, like that makes them more appealing to potential employees. And so like they're trying to do this to give employees the option of having liquidity, being able to sell their shares, even if the IPO timing is like slower than people want. And so, interestingly, the valuation of this round is going to be at the same valuation as the last private round. So it's again this 852 billion post-money valuation. And so, like, essentially, what they're telling employees is, if you need money, if you would like to participate in the San Francisco housing market or like whatever they want to do, like, here's a way to get that. But like, if you want to hang on, like, if you want to hang on for the lot bigger valuation, like, that's going to wait to the IPO.
Well, okay, to be clear, I think everyone would like to participate in the San Francisco housing market.
I don't know. It's bad out
Question
there.
is
That's what I appreciate.
right, all right, okay. Um, but back to this piece here about selling shares. So, would this be selling it on the secondary market, or would this be the company buying back shares? I just want to make that clear.
It was not specified to employees. Employees do not have a ton of information about this yet. Like they don't yet know how much they will be able to sell. They don't yet know like what the timing for this is going to
Okay.
be. If they've since been told, my signal is in the little thing. But yeah, so there's still some information that's to be determined. But I mean, this is something that OpenAI has done a lot. Like employees have sold around, I think, like $10 billion worth of shares at the last count. And so it's not like this is like, ooh, like new thing that they're doing for the first time. And it's not like it's something where no one has ever shown any interest in this. So like this is a pretty well-oiled machine at this point.
Right. Okay. And I always like to give folks a bit of a reminder on the current financial state of OpenAI, given that we report things very regularly, the situation changes. If OpenAI was to go public tomorrow, just remind us of the current financial profile of the company.
Yeah, so they've recently passed $30 billion in annualized revenue. They're obviously still losing money. Like the operating income margin is still negative, I believe, negative 122% last time it was reported. So revenue is growing. The situation that OpenAI is in now, though, is that they have been eclipsed by Anthropic in revenue. And like we've talked about this a ton on the show, so I don't totally need to go into it. But Anthropic, through products like Claude Code, Claude Cowork, has really been able to surpass OpenAI because of this enterprise focus. And so right now, what OpenAI is trying to do is trying to catch up on codecs, catch up on coding, like catch up with enterprise. Because right now, if the two companies were to both go public, like my colleagues Willie DePell and others have written about this a lot, um, Anthropic could be like a more attractive bet to a lot of public market investors, and so that's what OpenAI is really trying to catch up on.
Right. But of course, we sit at an interesting moment here where Codex is actually now more popular, I think, on many metrics compared to Claude Code. And our colleague Stephanie Palazzolo has done some great reporting on just how people are really liking that product. And so that's all the more reason to have you on more often to give us the updates here because things change. Erin, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Erin Woo, our OpenAI and Google reporter here at The Information. Apple unveiled an updated AI strategy at its Worldwide Developers Conference yesterday, featuring a long awaited update to Siri and a partnership with Google's Gemini models. I want to bring on The Information's Apple reporter, Erin Tilley, to break down everything that we saw. Erin, welcome back to the show. Give us the update here. What were the biggest announcements yesterday? What stood out to you?
Yeah, so Apple finally unveiled its Siri reboot. They're calling it Siri AI. And the big sort of strategic shift is so it's finally going to have a more capable underlying AI model, that being Gemini. Gemini is be playing an important role behind the scenes as far as what's powering the model. And then on top of that, Siri for the first time is its own dedicated app. Before, interacting with Siri would require either calling her out as the voice part or pressing a button. This time it's a dedicated app similar to a Claude or ChatGPT where you can sort of go into an app and look at past conversations, look at what else the ongoing conversations. And so that strategically as a product is a pretty major shift for the company. But yeah, yesterday we saw sort of some demos of what it's capable of. And a big takeaway for that for me is that Apple really seems to be underselling the capabilities. 2 years ago, they were really overhyping the capabilities. I think this time they're really trying to be a lot more measured in terms of what they're promising this thing can do. And we saw what they showed off.
So that's your take on the marketing tactics here, the underselling here. If we focus on the capability itself, what they actually showed and what this thing is able to do, were you overwhelmed or underwhelmed in terms of what they showed?
It's pretty underwhelming as far as like what the
Because
like
I was watching it like really like this is what it is, the big Siri overhaul.
I think it's they're being very careful because they were sued after the announcement 2 years ago of marketing of false marketing because they were way overselling it. And so I think they're being super careful to be measured with what they are claiming capabilities are.
Hmm. So, one of the most interesting parts about this was which iPhones work and don't work with Apple Intelligence and with sort of the new slate of upgrades. Talk a little bit about which iPhones work, because this is kind of a big question, whether or not this will actually drive an upgrade cycle, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely going to be a lot of grumbling on that. The Apple Intelligence announcement 2 years ago was able to handle a broad range of phones, and this is going to be a narrower set. So I think that certainly is the part of it is Apple's claiming is the amount of memory on the device capable of running the more sophisticated on-device models. So that's their justification. And I think that's, certainly true that there is a limitation, a bottleneck in terms of what memory is on the device. But for sure, underlying that is a push for new devices, the next generation of devices that they'll announce in September, including their foldable iPhone. So it's always about, driving the next upgrade cycle.
Martin Pierce, our co-executive editor, had some great commentary on this piece in his briefing newsletter last night, and I think his conclusion was that that the upgrades that were released yesterday, they won't actually drive an upgrade cycle. Which, at the end of the day, I mean, this is what, and this is what leads us to our next question, which is where was John Ternus here? I mean, Apple is still an iPhone company. They make all their money on the iPhones, and so John Ternus is the iPhone guy. Where was he yesterday?
This was Tim Cook's last WWDCs, his last the developer annual developer conference. And so I think just giving him the space to sort of have his last developer conference was the move here. He was certainly there and was at sort of the surrounding meetings at the sort of the big sort of unveiling for Sunday night sort of a kickoff event. So he was all over the place in terms of just being present physically there. But yeah, he didn't show up in any of the announcement videos. And I think this is about giving space for Tim Cook's last WWDC.
Hmm. Last question for you. You had reported this a little while back, but we got a little more color here around Apple's partnership, not just with Google, but also with Nvidia. Did we learn anything more there yesterday, from the conversations outside of the actual WWDC? And what was your reaction there?
Yeah, at the keynote for the new Siri, they claimed, well, they didn't say anything, but in the sort of post keynote events, they acknowledged that they will be relying on Google's servers and their Nvidia GPUs, and that's a big departure from the past. When they announced in 2024 these new products, they said it would be all running internal servers and on device. Apple has this thing called private cloud compute, which is Apple silicon running in their own server clouds. And this time, Apple, it just isn't capable of running these massive Gemini models. So they have to rely on Google Cloud and NVIDIA GPUs to do that. So that's a big, I think, blunder for the company. The company made a lot of big promises about how great their chips are and how privately they run. And they can't do that. It's that they're just not capable enough yet. So they're having to rely on third party for that too.
Great. Well, Erin, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Erin Tilley, our Apple reporter here at The Information. For more coverage on WWDC, I want to bring on Ray Wang, the CEO of Constellation Research, for his analysis. Ray, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me.
So, what letter grade would you give Apple on this release that we saw yesterday?
I would say it's a solid B. I mean, it's everything they promised in 2024. It's delivered. But I do have to take into account, I mean, it's hard when you're trying to, balance privacy and security with context and personalization. Those things are typically at odds with each other. And so there's no compromising on those two things. And for Apple to go and deliver what they were trying to deliver, it's actually a solid B.
Solid B. Okay. What would have made it an A?
Well, I think the challenge is we have this view of AGI, this super intelligence and being able to do all these things and being predictive, but we also forget that it's the little things on the side. It's all the little actions that you're trying to bring together. And so what would have made an A would be, wham features where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe like it's able to, guess 3 steps ahead of me. But in order to do that, you'd have to give up a lot of privacy or trade a lot of data to be able to go do that. And of course, the models are just coming up. And so leveraging the Google Gemini models is really helping them. And I think they're going to keep learning from that over time.
Now, I wonder, did this change your impression of Apple's AI strategy at large? I mean, we have sort of a different beast here. They are not going so hard at the excessive amounts of capex, investment in new models. They're taking a pretty reserved approach to all of this, at least as far as we know. This seemed to be pretty in line with that, right?
You're definitely right, Akash. I mean, what's going on here is it's a very pragmatic approach. If you think about the hundreds of billions, almost trillions of dollars that's going to be spent on data centers by Google and Meta and Amazon, and of course, all the other companies that are building out the clouds to deliver on that, Apple's like, why do we need to do that? I mean, we've got 1.25 billion devices, decentralized AI on the way here, and it's really going to benefit the individual and the consumer, not for the super intelligence that everyone else is being. So this is a different play. And Apple may be the most efficient player in this AI race because they're fixated on building what's important for you in your pocket.
Right. So you talked about the 1.25 billion devices. I mean, I guess the thing that I was thinking about yesterday as I watched the keynote was, does it really matter? Like, does AI really matter? Is AI really ever going to drive people to buy more iPhones, or really is it just a checkbox for them? I mean, I kind of left thinking, does it really matter what Apple does in the face of AI here?
It actually does because I'm not a big Siri user and I've never turned Siri on for more than a day. And I will be turning it on going forward because of the ability to do all these different tasks. The visual intelligence is going to be important. I'm going to get a 2x, maybe a 3x productivity boost being able to use all these new Apple Intelligence features, whether it's writing or composing something, whether it's responding, whether it's being able to move contextually very quickly. I mean, the example they showed about, hey, let's do a barbecue for someone. Hey, what ingredients do you have? Give me a recipe. By the way, let's go invite 15 people to that barbecue. Being able to thread these multitasks together, I mean, that is the lifesaver. And, being able to automate workflows at a personal level, that's a dream come true for me.
But okay, it's a dream come true for you, but do you think that people will actually make their decision to buy the iPhone or not based on how good Siri is? I mean, that's the heart of the question here, and I'm not so convinced that Siri being great or bad is really going to dissuade people who want to participate in the Apple ecosystem, no?
You're right, but it also keeps them from not leaving Apple to go to someone else that might have a better feature in AI. That would be the only thing on that end. So it's definitely keeps it more sticky. It's definitely not going to switch people from an Android phone to an iPhone. But the main point is it's going to actually allow them to build more services and drive TAM up based on those services that developers are able to create.
Hmm. Now, we know that this was Tim Cook's last WWDC, and John Ternus will take the reins in the fall. Do you have any view on whether or not AI or the approach to AI will change at all under John Ternus?
I think the approach isn't going to change, but I think the mindset will change. Tim Cook's job was really to take the existing pieces, try to figure out how to come up with the next big innovation, and really grow TAM, grow revenues, and grow war chest. And that's what Tim did. I mean, he was the efficiency expert, he was the supply chain expert, he was able to actually drive price increases, adjust pricing as needed. And that really changed the game for Apple, being able to have the cash for it. Now we need to go back to someone that's focused on product and innovation and engineering and make those decisions. Apple's toughest challenge isn't what to build, it's what not to build. They could build a lot of things. And you can see that from their exercise in building out the EV. I mean, they realized this was a race to the end. I mean, Chinese EVs are at $7,000 a pop. Apple's in the high margin, high volume game, and this wasn't going to take them there. And so hopefully with John, there's going to be that ability to actually find that next big thing after the iPhone.
What are the options here? We've heard, I mean, a flip phone, I guess, was sort of teased in some way with the layouts. I know people were really, I don't know. It seemed like there was a lot of analysis on what software could work on flip phones. I wouldn't really call that the biggest bet ever. Certainly because it's been worked on under Tim Cook's tenure. But when you talk about big bets, what are the menu of big bets that you think Turnus could take in the next few years?
Is the technology going to advance quickly enough that a Vision Pro gets down to where Meta glasses are? Is it going to be another device that sits at health that's going to give you the ability to do quantified health in a way that we hadn't seen before? Is there maybe an implant or device that's used to augment our ability to do things? Is it a personal robot that pumps up? There's so many choices that are out there. And of course, it's Apple's way of launching a market, launching a user experience that makes it unique.
Right. I want to ask you about Apple's reliance on Google and on Nvidia. That was a theme that also came out yesterday. Uh, what's your reaction to them having to rely on outside partners at all?
I think it was an important step to distinguish two things. One, they're using the most advanced models, whether it's Gemini, you could route that out for Anthropic in the future, you could swap it out for someone else. But Google for the enterprise is a good choice for them. And the second piece is that how they're handling privacy and trust, right? They've got their own layer. And then when they need to go out to world models or other types of advanced models, they'll go out, they'll protect the context, they'll protect the privacy, and then bring back the information and insights. I think that was the important piece. They're not giving up on privacy and trust. And it's also why it took them this long.
Hmm. Great. Well, Ray, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Ray Wang, CEO of Constellation Research here on TITV. We spoke yesterday on the show about the SpaceX mafia, or the former SpaceX employees who have gone on to start their own companies. Many of them stand to gain big from the shares they earned during their time at the company. One of those former employees is Scott Morton. He is the founder and CEO of Revel, a company that makes industrial software, which was last valued at $1.25 billion. I want to bring on Scott to reflect on his time at the company. Scott, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here.
Okay, big week. How you feeling?
I'm feeling awesome. Yeah, this is
Are the
incredible time for.
group chats are firing up over there?
Yes, we've got internal chat here, Rebel, bunch of former SpaceX engineers, super excited.
And do I have this right that most of your company, a lot of your company is former SpaceX engineers, right?
Yeah, it's correct. We're about 70% former SpaceX software engineers.
Wow. And tell me, like, culture at SpaceX, what were the things from SpaceX that you have really tried to emulate in your own company insofar as culture or even routines, habits, patterns?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of like high agency but high accountability. So we definitely have kind of the SpaceX strong execution culture here. But also I think like the mission oriented approach. Like, our mission here is to accelerate all the companies out there, building extraordinarily difficult things, and really enabling them to move much faster. I don't know if you know about Revel, what exactly we do, but it's a software platform for controlling and testing hardware systems. So think like rocket engine test sites, nuclear reactors, even how the water actually gets to your house is a series of pumps and valves that have a lot of software involved. Um, and you kind of have these companies that are building extraordinarily complex things and cutting edge systems like hypersonic jets, and they're using software that dates back to like the 1980s. So this is like pre Windows 98 era software, and so Rebel is here to fix that.
Right, right. What about things from SpaceX that you are deciding to leave at SpaceX, or things that you don't want to continue emulating at your company?
I had a great time at SpaceX. I think it was, we achieved incredible things. I originally joined because I just wanted to work on this incredible mission, making rockets reusable and ultimately getting to Mars. Uh, and and I I don't I think SpaceX is a great place to work. I had a
No,
great time
and look, I'm not looking for anything here.
there.
I just, I sort of wonder, you have all these SpaceX employees that have now branched out and started their own companies.
Mhm.
And I know, we've heard so much about the tremendous work ethic, the ability to believe in a moonshot mission. I also think that there are probably some nuances in the way that, maybe we don't want to, create a company that won't burn money for, X amount of years. Maybe we want to go a little bit narrower in terms of our financial profile. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think, um, yeah, I think I think it's not for everyone, SpaceX. People work extremely hard there. The timelines are pretty tough. Um, but I think that is kind of what it takes to be successful.
Right. If you look back on your time there, and you were there for a long time, and you could take a second here. I wonder what the most defining memory you have there. What day you remember at SpaceX among all the years you spent there? What day or what memory really sticks out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I started working on in launch operations. I actually wrote the propellant load sequence for Falcon 9, which is what takes propellant from the launch pad and puts it on the rocket. And I think that first launch that I was a part of, I was actually in the control room. And I remember I walked in the morning and I looked around, and it was such a young squad. It was like I think the only person over 30 was the launch director, and I was like, "Are we really about to go to go launch this rocket?" Uh, and it was extremely successful. I just think SpaceX bets big on its people, and
But I mean, paint the picture for you. This was what year was this?
this was 2018. It was a Falcon 9 launch out of Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Okay, and so you walk. So I mean, not all of us have the opportunity to be part of a launch operation like that. Like, paint a picture for us. What is the control room like? What were you doing? What was the buzz?
I mean, yeah, yeah, I mean, there's always consoles set up, and there's it's kind of you and honestly, it's all your friends. These are people you've worked with extremely hard the last, in that case, campaign was like 6 months, and you kind of T minus 5 hours is when you arrive. You go sit down at your console. Um, there's definitely kind of a nervousness going on. You're like, this is about to. There's kind of like could be a really great outcome. There could be, it's a very high stakes situation, and 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 then you start working through it. And you kind of get to work, and then it's a big team of people, and you're all just problem solving all the way through to T0. Um, and there's all these phases that kind of build slowly up to like T0. Things kind of start kind of slow. You start to prepare the pad. Then you start to prepare the rocket, and then you start to do the integrated operations. And it is kind of a cool build up until finally when a lot of things happen very quickly all at T0, and then you see it launch. The coolest thing about Vandenberg Air Force Base is that you actually can see out the window as the rocket leaves the launch pad. So it's a really nice kind of yeah, it's a great kind of control room, at least for the operators.
And what about when the launches don't go well? This is the reality
Mhm.
of space.
Yeah.
It's hard. When the launches don't go as planned, what's the atmosphere then?
It's extremely tough. I have been involved in a few of these. I've actually kind of gone out to the launch site after we had an off nominal event and helped kind of pick up the pieces, literally like the pieces on the launch pad back in early Starship. Um,
What was
those
that
are
like?
I mean, it's really tough. But it's also when you learn the most. I mean, it's like you spend the next few months just thinking about exactly what went wrong and why did that happen? What could I have done? There's a series of meetings that comes after that where, you have to present on exactly why this happened, all the way to Elon potentially. And it's really just a time of reflection of how do we do better? How do we integrate not only for yourself, how do you uh, integrate these experiences into next time, but also for the entire company. It's a very like introspective period where you want everyone to learn as much as possible.
What's your most vivid memory of working with Elon? Did you meet him?
Yeah, I did. So early Starship, he was quite involved. Uh, I think that one of them was definitely when I mean, it was like orbital flight one of Starship was absolutely incredible. I mean, it was like years of work at that point, so much coming together. But I think another was when I realized that he was serious about trying to catch the booster on the launch tower. And like I think that was uh and then kind of when the designs actually came together and being able to see that this actually looks like it will work. And at first, when I heard kind of the idea of these chopsticks, I was like, "What are we like? We're just trying to get this to work. What are we doing here?" But then actually seeing it and being in the room and like and him being very serious, we were actually doing this. We were catching the rocket with the launch tower, and then I think that was like a moment where I was like, this is a very different situation, a very different kind of leader.
What
And
was it? What was it about him that convinced you? Like, what did he say in that moment that
it
convinced
was
you?
just, it was his conviction that this is the right path. And, it was like, we're basically not going to build legs on this booster. It's just not, we're just like fundamentally, we're making this massive bet. And we're just, because it's like so fundamental to the rocket is having legs on it. It influences the structure, the entire aft end of the vehicle. And we're just going down this course and we're going to make it work. And the betting on the team, betting that we could do it, I think was just another, realization of how extraordinary leadership works. And
Right.
yeah.
I want to ask you. So, look, the ambition is tall, and Elon is a tremendous leader. The valuation is also extraordinary, and I say this knowing that you're a former SpaceX employee. You obviously want your own shares to go as high as they can, but help us think about the valuation. I mean,
Mhm.
there's really not a lot of fundamentals to it. Uh, how do you? What do you say to people that say that it's too high?
I guess overall, I'm not spending too much time personally thinking about this. We've got a lot going on at Revel, a lot of customers to worry about. But what I will say is, I think I've just seen along the way, a lot of people doubted kind of could you land a rocket, a rocket that is send something to orbit, then could you rapidly reuse that, or then could you reuse that, and then could you do it reliably, and then of course there's Starship. It's just kind of this kind of pattern goes on and on through the life of SpaceX, and I think the valuation is probably heavily associated with orbital data centers. And I think it's tough to bet against Elon is kind of my yeah, my general thought there. Yeah, I honestly haven't spent too much time thinking about it. I'm super busy at Revel. We've got a lot to do. Um,
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm excited about what you guys are doing at Revel, and I'm keen to have you back on to tell us more about that because I think, the prospects of your own company are also really interesting. But I really do want to thank you for coming on and helping us understand your time at SpaceX, Scott. That is Scott Morton, the CEO of Revel and a former longtime SpaceX engineer here on TI TV.
thank you for having me.
The staggering demand for GPU and the rapid infrastructure buildout has some trading firms looking for an opportunity to create derivative products tied to the scarce resource that is compute. My colleagues Yuechi Yang and Dakin Campbell published a scoop on that this week. I want to bring on Dakin to share with us what he knows. Dakin, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Okay, so I mean, the first line of the story, I'll just read it. The first line is Goldman Sachs and JPMorgan are exploring ways to trade on the cost of computing power. How would that tactically work?
Yes, good question. So this is a new market. Really, what they're looking at first is futures contracts, and a futures contract is basically a contract to buy or sell something at a future date at a certain price. So there are lots of futures out there now on corn and oil and the S&P 500. So it's definitely a well-known and well-established contract. The idea here, the price here would be the price to rent a GPU for a single hour. So maybe you've seen on on various neocloud websites or things like that, you can see they have a dashboard where you can go to that and see what their GPU rental prices are. And so the idea here would be to write a futures contract on some sort of a generic price to rent a GPU for an hour.
Hmm. And so Goldman Sachs and JPMorgan, so they're basically looking at creating this type of derivatives product. Well, we don't know how far they are in the process yet. Is that right?
They are looking at trading this derivatives product
Okay.
and helping clients buy and sell it. So already the exchanges ICE and CME and a startup called Architect have said that they are working to create this futures product, this futures contract, sorry. And the idea would be once they create it, they need to then create a market around it, and that's where firms like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan would come in. They would offer to make markets in that futures contract. So a client could come to them and say, hey, I want to buy the futures on GPU. I want to somehow hedge my exposure to GPU prices. And Goldman or JP Morgan would say, okay, we can do that for you. And then they would go into the market, buy it or sell it, and perform that service for clients.
Got it. And silly questions here, but I haven't
Yes.
I haven't studied the build out of derivatives markets
Understood.
as closely as you have, certainly. So Goldman and JP Morgan, would they be acting as the brokers here in this relationship, representing clients, or would they be the client themselves?
Yeah, great. That's a great question. It's not a silly one. We don't know the answer yet. It's sort of so early in this build out and so early in their exploration that we don't know. I think, my assumption would be far enough down the line, they'd be doing both. Certainly JP Morgan is a big lender to neoclouds and to others. So they have exposure to GPU prices. So it would make sense for them to, on their own behalf, go into the market and buy futures or sell futures to hedge that exposure. Um, but then they've also got big trading clients that would come to them and want them to do it for them as
Right.
well.
So, Dakin, when you first came across this bit of information in your reporting, I mean, you've been following the AI story from a financial perspective for a long time here. Did this surprise you? Was this inevitable? What was your reaction to it overall?
I think this is inevitable. We saw something like this develop for crypto markets, 10, 15 years ago. Uh, they were very early, and the way that a lot of these markets develop is there is a financialization of them. You will have firms that come in and they can see similarities to derivative products or other securities that exist already, and so they've got a mental model uh, for how to develop them again. And so it felt sort of inevitable to me that when we got into artificial intelligence and we're spending, trillions of dollars on compute, that you would have firms coming into this market to create derivatives and to create other ways to trade and hedge against that exposure.
So it's inevitable, but is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Does it add risk to the equation here? I mean, I can't help but think here that the more that a market becomes real and financialized, if these are the, I don't even know what the right terminology here is, but like, counterparty risk then becomes, more prevalent throughout the ecosystem, right? So you have the circular financing happening in one way, you have the data center build out happening in another part, and then you have trading firms that are basically spreading the risk out, right, to a broader series of parties.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, if you go to an individual actor and say, we're going to create a product that's going to let you hedge your exposure, they would say to you, this is a good development. This is a way for me to reduce some risk. I don't want to be long GPUs all day long. I want a way to reduce my exposure. So in that sense, derivatives can be a good thing. We've seen a lot in history and other financial cycles where derivatives just become too big and you can't really accurately predict who is holding the risk on each side of the derivative. You can't predict whether the counterparty, as you said, is going to be able to pay at the end of that contract. And so this is definitely something we're going to be watching, even though it's inevitable. I think it's a big next step in sort of the AI build out. And down the road, there could be real challenges.
Hmm. And last question for you: are there any regulatory hurdles here to creating a derivatives market for GPU compute?
Yeah, so the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC, oversees all futures contracts, so they will need to weigh in on this one. I assume, we for this story we did put a call into the CFTC. We did not hear back, but I assume that the three exchanges that are exploring creating the futures contracts are in touch with them and have some expectation that they'll get approval from the CFTC eventually. I don't think they would have gone public with their announcements if they didn't think that they could find a way through. So you won't see anything trading here in the U.S. until the CFTC gives a final approval. But I think that'll probably happen by the end of the year, certainly.
Right. And just to go back to what you were saying at the very start, so there are exchanges, Intercontinental Exchange, for example, they are the ones that are developing the infrastructure that would ultimately decide on the price, right? By that I mean they're not setting the price, but they are sort of facilitating the intersection of all these different players. So that is currently the build-up that is happening underneath the surface.
That's right. That's right. And once they create the product, then you have a market that develops around that product. And that's what JPMorgan and Goldman and other market making firms, we quoted DRW in our story. There are others also that sort of grow up around that product and facilitate trading of that product.
Great. Well, it is a fascinating story, and I suspect we are just at the start of it, Dakin. So I look forward to having you on more to help us explain the developments. That is Dakin Campbell, our AI finance reporter here at The Information. That does it for today's show. A reminder, we are on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you can't make it then, episodes are available at theinformation.com, on our YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to follow us on social media, on X, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on LinkedIn. I am already excited for our next show tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Bye-bye for now.